broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II. Coming up this hour, we're talking about one of Detroit's newest sports franchises. A women's hockey team is coming to the D. Plus, what's so funny about Detroit Comedy Showcase is back tonight. Ryan Patrick Cooper will join the show and give us a taste of what to expect. And later, we'll hear the history of Detroit's swim mobiles and the legend of a secret society in Detroit based on racism and murder. But before we get into all of that, let's talk hockey. Detroit is getting a professional women's hockey league team, a milestone that was nearly inevitable. The fans here are passionate. Detroit is known as Hockey Town USA for a reason. The championships are plentiful. The Red Wings have the third most Stanley Cups of any NHL team, and the history is long. Founded in 1926, the Red Wings are members of the original 6 NHL teams. So considering the city's deep connection to hockey, not to mention the developmental organization in Plymouth, Michigan, or the superstar hockey players that play in the Olympic teams every year that are from Michigan, it's pretty fitting that Detroit will be one of 4 cities joining the PWHL in its 4th season. Maya Smith is a journalist with The 9 Sports. It's a platform that covers women's sports, and she's been following professional women's hockey since before the league began in 2024. She joins me now. Maya, welcome to the Metro.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you. I'm excited.
All right. So am I, and so are a lot of hockey fans in the Metro Detroit region, too. I mean, typically we hear about ownership groups kind of starting expansion teams, but this is a newer league. So break this process kind of down for us, because it was a little different. How did this come to be? How did Detroit become the newest expanded team?
Absolutely. So, yeah, the PWHL is only going into its 4th season. So this kind of growth is really exciting as both a hockey fan and as a journalist. So the league started with 6 teams, 3 in Canada and 3 in the United States. And then in this past season, they just expanded to include 2 more teams, one in Vancouver, British Columbia, and one in Seattle, Washington. And now the league is moving into its next phase of expansion, bringing in 4 new teams. So Detroit, obviously included in that. And then we also have San Jose, Las Vegas, and Hamilton, Ontario. One thing that makes the PWHL a little bit different from these other leagues is that it's all centrally owned by one ownership group. Mark Walter Group and BJK Enterprises own the league. And so it's not really a case of which owners wanted to buy a team to bring them into the league. It's more about where a city would be a good fit and where there would be a good partnership with the existing, facilities and ownership there. So a little bit different than, a WNBA franchise or something like that.
Now, the league revealed the team's color scheme. The primary color is going to be black and silver. It's going to be complemented by white as a secondary color. And then there's going to be like a red accent. But is there any official name for the team yet?
No, we don't know about that yet. In the past, it's seeming almost like a rite of passage for the teams to play under PWHL and then the city name. We saw that in the first season of the league, and then Vancouver and Seattle both played under those names. But it's possible that we will see name and logo and branding announcements before the season starts, but it's unlikely at this point that it'll be on the jerseys for the first season.
That sounds like the Washington football team when they were switching to the Commanders. There's that like weird period where the name isn't there and you're like, well, we're going to call you the team.
Exactly.
So PWHL Detroit is what we're going to be going by until they find an official name.
Yeah, and maybe you can be one of the cool people who owns a jersey that says Detroit on it instead of the brand. I just bought one for Vancouver, so it's kind of a collectible.
Ooh, that's a good point. Have like a city branded jersey. All right, that's cool. Okay, so as you said, this is the 4th season. Detroit will join the league in the 2026 season. That's correct, right? That's this year.
That's correct.
That's a fast turnaround. What needs to be done between now and then, outside of course, picking a team name?
Yeah, there's so much to be done, and it's all happening really quickly here. They did name a GM to the team, so Manon Graham, who, if you have followed sports pretty much ever, hockey ever, she is a huge name. She was the first woman to ever play in the NHL, and she has, I believe, been really influential in developing women's hockey players in Detroit. So that's good. That's done. But now they have to build a team. And so they're about to enter a 6 phase kind of expansion process where they will be able to sign existing players in the league to come and join their team. And then they'll also get to build their team from college and European players that are coming into the entry draft, which is also being hosted in Detroit on June 17th.
Yeah, we've got the draft next month as well. Let's talk about the momentum that led to this moment. There were professional women's hockey leagues before this league. What's really the difference between those attempts and this one? Because those weren't as successful. They weren't successful at all. They ended.
Yeah, I mean, there is a long history of women's leagues that have started and ended, and I do really believe that they have set the foundation to get to where we are now,
Mm.
and that they deserve to, have their spotlight for what they have brought. I think we're in a time right now where women's sports is just kind of in the zeitgeist. That everybody is like loving and supporting it, which is so awesome, especially to come. So I think part of it is just momentum at the right time. They hit a time where people really want to be watching women's sports, but they also have, buy-in from players across the board, which they may not have had in previous leagues. And they also have strong, financing and marketing and just kind of that overall foundation of this league that I think has really helped it to succeed over maybe some of the previous leagues.
Okay, it's always about perfect timing. Once
Mhm.
you've got the opportunity, things can flourish there. Makes sense. You're listening to the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. the second. My guest is Maya Smith. She covers women's hockey for the platform The Nine Sports. And we're talking about the expansion of the Professional Women's Hockey League into Detroit. Now, Maya, the PWHL, as you said earlier, owned by the Mike Walter Group, and Mike Walter being the CEO. Can you give us a bit more information on who Mike Walter is and how he's able to support this league and its expansion?
Yeah, we don't know a lot about the financials of the league as a whole. I tried to do a little bit of before this, and there's just not a lot known to the public about it. But Mark Walter, he's a pretty well-known name in sports. He's the CEO and co-chairman of TWG Global. He owns the Dodgers, Lakers, Sparks. Also, if you're a racing fan like me, he owns Andretti Global. He also owns Gainbridge, which is often a sponsor of a lot of these bigger sporting events. And he partnered with Billie Jean King, who is also a very well known name in the sports world, tennis star, and they run the league or they own the league, and then it's run by a board as well. So um, he has quite a lot of money to bring in here, and I think that's part of it, along with the work that a lot of the women's hockey players over time have done to kind of build the league that they've been looking for this whole time.
Yeah, he's got his hands in a lot of different leagues, and it just seems I imagine that weighed into, I guess, his expertise or his experience having his hands in multiple sports. You said the Sparks, the Lakers. Did you say the Dodgers as well?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
I would imagine that's definitely part of it, and then I think also the connections that he would have from that, and also, the connections that Billie Jean King would have and kind of her influence in the women's sports sphere.
I see. Okay, so
Mhm.
him as an influential owner, having his hands in multiple teams across multiple leagues, can we glean anything from the way he's operated as an owner of some of his other teams to what kind of trajectory he's going to chart for the PWHL?
I mean, I'm not an expert in MLB or NBA, but I know the Dodgers and Lakers are super successful
Sure.
franchises. Andretti Global as well, and I believe also involved with Cadillac F1. So just I would imagine he's used to taking some big leaps to get to these places, and yeah, to put the money behind it to kind of build these impactful long term name recognition brands.
Okay. Now I want to go back to Detroit and our team. We got our team almost directly in response to our support of the league when the PWHL had a neutral site games hosted in the city of Detroit. Thousands showed up in attendance. Are there any indicators that the league will expand again anytime soon outside of the four that are joining? Are we seeing other cities hosting games with large support and this kind of swelling of fandom for the hockey league?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I mean, I have just been so impressed with the fan turnout for every city that they've been to. Last year, they did a lot of takeover tour games, not just in Detroit, but Halifax, Canada had sellout crowds for theirs. Vancouver and Seattle both had really high turnouts in the ones they hosted before they got teams. But as far as I understand it from the league, getting to 12 teams was kind of the goal, and now there's a lot of things behind the scenes that they can also work on with the 12 teams. There
Hmm.
could be conferences involved or divisions to kind of limit the travel that some of the West Coast teams would have to do
Yeah.
to the East. There's also the possibility of, development pipelines right now. Players come in from college or from Europe, and it's not kind of the NHL model where there's farm teams to kind of develop the players. So I think there's a lot of places for the league to grow without expanding. But that being said, maybe if the growth continues this way, they decide they want to expand to 16. But right now, they said 12 was their goal.
Can you expand on that a little bit more? The development pipeline you talked about. You said typically they come
Mm.
from college or from overseas, but in the NHL they have these like kind of lower league teams that they develop players through. What would the PWHL's development pipeline look like if they tried to do something more efficient? And why is the way that they're doing it now, is it not efficient enough?
I think it's efficient. I think this is just kind of a way to support the players who maybe aren't PWHL level
Mm.
at the time, but still want to keep playing or still want to, have that chance outside of what they've done in college or overseas. I feel like it's a long way out, but it is something that would kind of help bring the players onto the teams a little bit, more. You're not losing your chance after you graduate college, or you don't have to go overseas necessarily. But yeah, right now, mostly the players come in from the NCAA, and also the professional leagues in Europe, a little bit from Canadian universities, but it's not quite as prevalent at this point. So, a long way down the road, I would imagine, but just a way to kind of, have those players to come in if there are injuries or things like that, instead of the current format where they carry a few extra players around with them to kind of practice, but don't often get a lot of games.
I see. It sounds like there's an eligibility issue too with NCAA. Once they're out of college, there's really where do they go to
Mhm.
continue playing and developing
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of them will go overseas to Europe, and those leagues are really awesome. I think having a development pipeline would just have the eyes on them a little bit more.
in their domestic still over here, at least in North
Totally.
America. I see. You're a former athlete yourself. I'm curious to know more about this kind of pipeline for the programs that do exist in the NCAA for development, whether it's a club team, whether it's a Division I hockey team specifically. What is the value of that in its current state?
Yeah, I was not Div 1 level hockey player.
Right.
Well, I'll just make that
Sure,
clear,
sure,
but
sure.
I mean, I think that the college to PWHL pipeline is great because it allows the players to have an education and get an education while also playing hockey, because quite frankly, up until the PWHL started, it was very rare to be able to make a living wage playing professional women's hockey. Now the salaries were just released actually for the first time this week, and we're kind of seeing what they're being paid, but they're all, this is their full-time job. They're not working other full-time jobs like they would have been in the past. So I think the college pipeline is great because you get that education. If you don't want to play hockey anymore, you have like this foundation to kind of build off of. In terms of getting to college, I think it looks different in every state, city, province, no matter
Hmm.
where you come from. You're being scouted kind of in the, high school level age to go play for a team. And then from there, you do still have to be in kind of the top percentage of those college players to get a look at a PWHL team. We're seeing, national champions be drafted and award winners be drafted. It's
Hmm.
not really just like if you go to college, you'll end up in the PWHL, but that does seem to be kind of the primary path,
Still.
as well as getting to the Olympics through that way too.
All right, and could the expansion of the PWHL here in Detroit, or really as it expands across the nation, do you think that might encourage either major universities to develop a D1 program? Do you think for places that don't have it, like Michigan, we don't have NCAA Division I women's hockey team here. We do have club teams here, but they don't have an NCAA team. And as you just said, there is some value to having that program. Could this PWHL Detroit team be some more motivation for us to develop some semblance of a pipeline, I guess, for women's hockey players?
Absolutely. I think I've heard from a lot of people who really do want that Div 1 NCAA program to come back to Michigan. I mean, Michigan is a hockey state, it would make sense for them to have that program. I think we're seeing girls enter hockey at, the youth level, and the more girls that are playing hockey at that level, the more, drive there is to implement more programs for them. And then the more likelihood I think there would be to bring back that college program. I think having, if you're a young girl who wants to get into hockey and you see these people on your TV screen or in your local arena, multiple times a week, I think that's a really great incentive to want to get into the game and see what you could become. And I think the more that happens, the more there will be a drive for more programs.
Okay, Maya Smith is a journalist with The Nine Sports, a platform that covers women's sports. Maya, thank you so much for taking the time to break this all down and get us excited for PWHL Detroit.
Thank you.
Coming up tonight is the What's So Funny About Detroit Comedy Showcase at the Old Miami. Joining me is Ryan Patrick Cooper from WDET's In the Groove. We'll be right back on the Metro.